Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on August 1st, 2021 at approximately 5:44 a.m. PST. I was asked one day a long time ago about what I thought about birthdays. Okay, and I got in trouble for the response because of the person that asked it. But let's sort that out first of all. Um, Today I'm going to discuss birth and, well, both birth and death. Okay. But where it comes to birthdays, in my opinion, you have one birthday and only one birthday. And that is usually the day you're physically born. Everything else is a celebration of it. Okay. Now, yes, I have been known to take things in a bit of a literal sense. And needless to say, we're having fun with our throat again. But I've been known to take things in kind of a literal sense. Okay. So when I was asked what I thought about birthdays, my immediate response was I could care less about them, thinking that it was referring to me. I don't tend to celebrate birthdays much. Okay, I haven't in years. Now, this does not mean they are not important. For pretty much everybody, the celebration of a birthday is extremely important to that individual. To me, it just boils down to another day. Okay, and that's for me personally. My own kids, my own friends, those I do tend to celebrate. Where I got into a problem was the person that asked me at the time I was dating, and they asked me literally what my take was on birthdays. Well, my response was pretty cut and dried. I could care less about them, I think. What I didn't know was what happened after that. A few days later, my other half at that point quit talking to me. And it was a couple of days after that I finally got a chance to ask. I says, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "Well, you missed my birthday." I says, "When was that?" Because we'd only been dating each other for a couple of months. Right. So I asked her, I says, "Well, when was that?" So she tells me, and I went, "Wait a minute. When you asked me what I thought about birthdays, you were trying to hint that it was your birthday coming up." Sorry, didn't know. Okay, and this is why I said, are birthdays important for most people? The answer is yes. But now we get to the screwy part, the reason they're not overly important to me. Now, I was born on May 13th of 1963 at approximately 2 p.m. Okay, PST. The problem arises when we realize that on August 1st, today, of 1968 at approximately 4:14 p.m. PST, I walked out of the morgue. I was diagnosed dead and was put in the morgue. Which, by the way, you got to be dead a long time to get to the morgue. So I walked out of the morgue at approximately, well, I was diagnosed dead at approximately 4:14 p.m. Okay, essentially meaning I was born again. Okay. Now, it's really kind of funny when you think about it, because I had an astrologer try and talk to me. When he first met me, he looks at me and goes, when's your birthday? So I told him, and bear in mind, I gave him the May birthday. And he looks at me and he goes, "No, that's not possible." I says, "Well, it's the one that is on my birth certificate." He goes, "Look, if your birthday was on May 13th, I wouldn't like you at all. Do you have another day you can work with?" I says, "Yeah." I says, "I absolutely do." So I gave him my secondary birthday. And he goes, "Do you have a day that you can tell me that I can compare the two?" I looked at my science. "I can't give you a day, but I can certainly give you a month." He goes, "Okay." So I gave him the month, right? I gave him the month of the event. And he goes away. He comes back a couple of days later and goes, "Okay." He says, "I've got both." But he says, "It doesn't make any sense." if that were the case, then you would have, this couldn't happen. I said, certainly it could. So I laid out the event that was going on. And he just shook his head and he goes, I do not believe it. 35 years in this industry, and you're the first person I've run into that I require 2 natal charts for to be able to read. He says, I've never even heard of it before. Then I turn around and I'm talking to another psychic I was working with, who happened to be a rune reader. And at that time we used to exchange readings. Just part of it was to practice. To practice and to get to know each other. And she lays out the runes and she looks at me and she goes, do you have any idea why people can't read you? I looked at her and I went, no. I said, I know they seem to have trouble with it, but haven't got a real functional clue as to why. And she goes, everybody else I've ever met, they may think fast, they may jump between ideas, really quick, but they'll go down one road and and you can see the decision making. She goes, in your case, you seem to go down both tracks at exactly the same time. Kind of like instead of walking down the track, you're hopping down it. But you're hopping down both tracks. And she goes, there's no way to tell which way you're going to go until you make that sudden decision. And quite often that seems to be spur of the moment. Okay, which worked out really neat. So we're looking at it going, well, okay, that corroborates what the astrologer said. Then, while I'm seeing the psychiatrist a number of years prior to that, we had figured out that the brain had physically been separated due to the fever. There'd been a whole pile of damage. And then we had the added backup of a police handwriting analyst that I happen to know took the time to analyze my handwriting from both hands, which, by the way, right now is a bit of a mess. I mean, it was never good handwriting anyway. But this said, where it comes to birthdays, where it comes to celebrating that special day, technically I've got 2, which is what brought it to my attention today, because my current partner, she told me today, she reminded me that it was my birthday again. I'm like, okay, which got me thinking, how do people deal with it? Well, for me, it was pretty cut and dried. Okay, I'm talking to you about the way it works. Now, everybody says birth is a wonderful experience. Now, I will tell you, I do have 2 kids of my own that I have literally witnessed both being born. Ironically, I'm one of the few people that can honestly say I knew my wife inside and out, because in both cases, I was actually there for the C-section. And in this case, when the kids were born, I actually, whether I should have or not, well, I got in trouble for it, but oh well. I actually, because of the situation that was going on, I actually stood up and looked over the barrier, which meant I saw my children physically being pulled out of the womb. Apparently, by the way, this is a really bad idea for most people. Apparently, when people get pulled in, when people stand up to look at an operation, if they're not used to it, the massive majority of them seem to faint and hit the floor. I didn't. I stood up, and the woman and the nurse looks at me and goes, no, you gotta sit down. Okay, so I sat down. It wasn't going to cause a problem for them. I wasn't planning on it anyway. But when people tell you it's a wonderful experience, the joy that a new child brings into somebody's life on the whole is absolutely fantastic. It changes your life incredibly. However, on the few occasions when you actually remember said birth, trust me, from the child's standpoint, this is not an enjoyable experience. Okay. I remember being, like, in my case, because my memory works a little odd. Actually, it works fine because the recall was a little screwy. But I did have this all corroborated later. Okay, not in writing, not with witnesses, just corroborated with other people, so we work with it. Okay, when I was in utero, back in well, it would have been in 1962 when I was in utero, because I was born in 63, I felt an inoculation. Okay, I ended up with the inoculation in Mom's womb. Okay, so I remember that. I ran into somebody years later that corroborated that it happened. Okay, now what went on, the reason I say birth is not exactly an enjoyable experience from the child's standpoint, is I went from a real nice, comfortable, warm place, nice, soothing, soothing sounds. Basically, it boiled down to blood flow. Blood flow and the sound of the lungs working. Right? But very subdued to everything else. I went from there, being pushed through a tiny little pipe, okay, tiny little hole. It was nice, warm, quiet, subdued, very shadowed. There's no light, right? So it was very dark. Being pushed down a real tiny little tube out into freezing cold, bright light. Okay, then something grabbed me by the leg. Right, they pulled me out, grabbed me by the leg, turned me upside down, and beat the living daylights out of me until I screamed. Then they poked and prodded every orifice, my mouth, my ears, my nose, to make sure everything was working. Okay, I found out it was to make sure everything was working after the fact. What I thought at the time was I was just being poked and prodded and what have you. But I remember when they turned me back around, right? They turned me back around to show Mom and Dad, and I remembered Mom and Dad pulling back from me. Okay, I found out later I was born mottled green and black. Okay, so the doctor pulled in, they recoiled. I got raced over to the incubator, which means now these same people, these same things that pulled me out of that tiny little pipe, took me over and put me down. In my opinion, they slammed me down onto a really hard surface and turned on another extremely brilliant light that happened to be excessively hot as well, which, by the way, boils down to an incubator. Then they stabbed me several times, also known as hooked up IV lines and other things. Okay, and they closed the lid. Now, with that in mind, I was not happy. I was very unhappy in all fairness. So I ended up going, I'm not happy. I'm done. Right. I was in the incubator. I had all these things, poked into me. I'd been beaten. I'd been stabbed. I'd been prodded. You name it. So I was not in a good mood. So they put me in the incubator. And I went, I'm out of here. I'm done. And I literally, and if you know what astral travel is, this will make total sense. Basically, I took my entire life force out of the body. Now, I had no intention on going back, so I didn't bother leaving a marker. Most people, when they astral travel, they have what they do is they leave a silver umbilical cord to track back to their body so they can find it again. I had no interest in finding my body again. I was going home. So I got out of the body, up through the roof of the building, out of the building. I was gone. Right? I'm gone. What I pictured as, well, I really don't know what I would call it, but I got a certain distance out, and I ran into a council of 12, and they blocked my path. It's like, and they looked at me literally. It's like, where are you going? I'm going home. You can't. You have a contract to fulfill. I didn't sign up for that abuse, so I'm going home. Well, the conversation seemed to take forever, right, between me and these 12, and each of them had their own thing to say. Each of them, it amounted to, told me I had a major task ahead of me. And that primary task was what I've returned to hand out. That primary task was to let people know that when we work together, we can make this a better world for most people. Okay. I was also told to remind people there are only 3 laws that really add up. And check all of the religions, all the support crews you know. Take a look at the guidelines. Believe in yourself. Number 1, be true to yourself first. Number 2, believe in yourself and follow. Number 1 is be true to yourself. Number 2, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And number 3, energy out, energy in. And they asked me, do you understand? Yeah. Then you're going back. I'm like, I don't want to go back. And they said, that isn't an option. So they took me back to my body. I'd left it behind. I had no idea where I left it, and it could have cared less, I think. But I got sent back. Now, net result, I came back to the world. Now, I will tell you, where it came to my parents, okay, never mind the rest of the world and the rest of my interaction with it. Where it came to my parents, I could not have asked for a better set. Okay, I do not, in all my years, okay, I do not recall them ever fighting. Okay, I'm sure they probably had their disagreements, but my parents died, the last one died, I was 55 at the time because they died 3 years ago. But I was sent back to pass on this message. Now, to that end, I hope we get a thumbs up out of the video. And, subscribe to the channel. And absolutely remember to hit the alert button to let you know when the next video comes out. So, I got sent back. Okay. Now, years later, 5 to be approximate, I ended up making basically the same kind of a journey. Okay. And got told once again. Okay. Because and I'll get into that at another time, but for today, I had 5 years old, which is what brought me to the comment about this being my secondary birthday. In 1968, I was diagnosed dead and shipped to the morgue. Now, like I said, you gotta be dead a long time to get to the morgue. Okay. And during my transition out of that, because again, I'm done with this. I'm going home. And again, the council met me. And they cut me off. They cut off my exit point. And went, understand, let's start with that at the beginning of that. I decided I'd had enough. They diagnosed me as dead and shipped me to the morgue. So it's like, okay. So I got out of my body again. And I left. And the council cut me off again. Stopped my progress. And again they said, look, you have a job that you've got to do. You've got to spread this message that working together, those people, all of creation, working together can create a better world for everyone. But they're all going to have to do their own part. This is the message you have to figure out a way to convey to them. That is what your task is. Okay, that is one of the many things that you set up before you came down here, before you went down there in the first place. So, we'll take you back to your body, you're getting back in it, and you're carrying on. Well, of course, when I woke up in the morgue and sat up, I'll tell you, morticians are trained to handle the people that twitch, the ones that burp, the occasional one that sits up, but they are not prepared for the kids that wake up and leave. They're just not prepared for them. And when you think about the fact that in late 66, early 67, the original zombie movies at the time had just come out, This is only a year later, so they're all still the talk of the town at that point. You can see why the technician passed out. But again, I'll get to that particular part of the story later. But I got out and came back into the working world again. Well, into the living world. And carried on forward. Now, when you think about it, I had two births that I tried going home on both of them. Not to mention another time in between, but on those two in particular, I was born. I says, I'm done. I'm not impressed with the treatment that humans give people. I don't care if I had a contract. So that was fine. I turned around and I went, and I came back and it's like I'll make the most of it. Now, fortunately, I ended up with parents that were extremely supportive as far as the limitations I had ended up accumulating. But they also left me believing that all of my memories, and there was a lot more than just those two, were that they were all scrambled. That was clarified on my dad's deathbed, where he verified everything I'd been through, everything I'd talked about, the whole 9 yards, with near-death experiences, psychic phenomenon, alien abductions, interactions with military laboratories, and a whole slew of variances in metabolic modification. I could not really ask for better parents from that standpoint. Now just about a year ago, I'd gotten into a point, I'd reached the end of my rope. I'd tried relationships, and I was just fed up with the whole 9 yards. And long before that, I'd already started staying away from people. So I got into this state, and I'm going, I'm done. I can talk to the animals, I can talk to the plants, I can get along with all of them. I can see the interactions with people, that's easy, but I'm just no longer looking for a partner. I'd had enough. And I got called up again by what you would consider God and Mother Nature. But I got called up by them in front of the council again, third time up there with a serious interaction. And they said, look, you've got this major job to do. This major task that you agreed to spread this message that working together, we can make this world a better world. So they said, you've got this is what we expect. And I literally looked at them and I went, well, I know you expect that. And because of the fact I was directly physically involved in bringing my 2 kids in, I will absolutely take care of them. As for this message you want carried out, it's real simple. Unless I get somebody in my life that I can look forward to waking up next to, that I can look forward to having a life with, one that I don't have to worry about trying to explain all this and having them accept it. Unless I get that, I'm not working on the message. Now, at the same time this is going on, I had a lot of people from Spaced Out Radio, the original crew, on the internet, that were telling me, look, you've got a lot of information that needs to get out to people. So I had that going on in the corporeal world, and here's God and Esau, you call her Mother Earth or Gaia, told me, look, you agreed to this. This is what we expect. And I says, well, you can expect what you will. But we look directly at whom we call Father, which would be God. And we said, look, you can expect what you like, but you yourself gave us all free will, irrevocable even by you for all eternity. And he goes, yes. I says, well then, either I'm getting a partner in my life that I can look forward to spending my life with, or that message that you think that you want me to desire, that you desire me to pass on, isn't going to get passed on. And he goes, well, that is not what we were expecting. I says, probably not. I was always taught that God doesn't make mistakes. But apparently you didn't quite think, either you didn't think it through, or you figured this was going to happen and you were just waiting to see who took the bait. But the fact of the matter is, I get what I desire, or I'm not doing the other thing. Net result, 3 days later, the young lass that I'm with now, came into my life. And at that point I went, okay. I sat with that for a little while. I still didn't do anything with the journey. And a few days, a week and a half, 2 weeks down the road, I sat down. Well, let's see. We met her on the 8th. It was on the 24th of this month. That we made it official. And I dumped a little question in her lap. I said, look, before we let our hearts get involved, I says, here's the reality. There's two things that are non-negotiable. One, I'm not moving. Now, she's down in the States. I'm in Canada. And I says, number one, I'm not moving. Number two, I've got a child with minor special needs that if he never moves out, that's the way it is. That's just the reality. Those are non-negotiable. Well, it took her about 30 seconds. She goes, I can work with it. Well, after that, it was I started this on March 6th of 2021. That happened back in August of 2020. So, with that in mind, the journey was born. And I've been putting out these videos, for the most part, at least one a day. To spread the message that I returned to spread. Now, it was kind of comical because I talked to my ex-wife, mentioned her what had happened as far as my current other half goes, and of course my ex-wife turns around and says, "Well, isn't 3 days to decide you're going to marry a woman? Isn't that a little short?" I looked at her and says, "Well, not when you think that it was 30 seconds when I met you." And that relationship lasted 18 years. If we take the time we dated plus a 16-year marriage. So, for me, it was real simple. I've had, 3 run-ins with the council, not run-ins, but where I've literally gone up on my own behalf, never mind the numbers I've gone up and talked to them about other things. And literally ended up being, basically boiling down to, okay, here's the reasons I'm doing it my way. Which does kind of explain, when you think about it, why I've looked at bosses and what have you, and why I look at everybody on equal territory. Let's face it, if I'm willing to have a conversation with people in that kind of position and just go, this is what I'm doing, is it any real wonder why I look at the same thing? I still follow the law. And I will continue to follow the law and encourage you to do so. Now, I've got other things I gotta get done today, but that said, again, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, because there's a lot of other information that's coming. In the meantime, until we talk again, which will be tomorrow sometime, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.